So I think it would have shortened the time for me to become a better trained professional in the federal sphere, and would have given me probably a larger or a broader perspective of how my job fits in with everybody else's.
Welcome to the Transfer Files, inside the world of federal innovation. This is your insider's look at how federal laboratories bring groundbreaking technologies to market. I'm your host, Andrea Nelson. In every episode, we'll bring you insights and expertise from throughout the world of tech transfer. Today, we're joined by Andy Myers, who leads technology transfer activities at the Kansas City National Security Campus. Andy's career spans small business research, academia, and nearly a decade in federal tech transfer, giving him a unique perspective on how ideas move from the lab into the real world. In this conversation, Andy shares how his path into tech transfer started with a simple but powerful challenge: explaining complex science to people outside the lab, and why that in-between space is where innovation really comes to life. We also dive into something new that we've been hinting at, and we're excited to start sharing more about it. The FLC is rolling out a verification for professional registered ORTAs, or PROs. Andy breaks down what the PRO designation is, the problem it's designed to solve, and why establishing shared standards, language, and expectations is so important in a field where most professionals don't follow a traditional career path. From building credibility with partners to creating a clearer roadmap for professional growth, Andy explains how PRO is designed to strengthen both individual careers and the broader federal tech transfer community. If you've been curious about what's next for the profession, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Let's get into it. Andy Myers, thanks so much for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, before we dive into PRO, can you tell me a little bit more about your background, how you got into tech transfer, and what your role is now at the Kansas City National Security Campus?
Sure. I've always been interested and always had a need to explain the science I was doing to people that were supporting it. Maybe that was my parents paying tuition or the U.S. taxpayer as I did federally funded research. But I think scientists always have a need to explain to non-scientists what they're doing and the value of what they're doing, how it fits. And so I started off as a chemist. I did research in the chemistry space for a while at a small business. And I found that a lot of my time was spent talking to people, whether that be at the federal level, the people that were funding our programs, potential customers, or, just the occasional neighbor that wants to know what do you actually do? And over the years, being able to operate in that intermediate space became very rewarding to me and very interesting. And so a lot of technology transfer is trying to connect science with commercial applications, with technologies and business, looking at legal aspects of all of those things. And I find that combination just fascinating. So I've been able to do kind of research at a small business. I was able to move into academic research management and worked at an applied research group at a university. And then for the last approximately 9 years, I've been at the Kansas City National Security Campus doing federal tech transfer. And so really, this is, my career has kind of led up to this point where we're doing all of these things in a very unique space that is doesn't have the profit focus that industry does. So we're allowed to be pretty innovative and really push technology in areas that the way our country would like to grow. But we also are the ones that are trying to help move that into the public sphere. And, we recognize that federal labs can't also compete commercially, and we need to partner and further develop technologies. And so, the tech transfer career position responsibilities are key for that transition. So at the Kansas City National Security Campus, I lead our technology transfer activities. That means talking to inventors, um, deciding on patentability, connecting with external partners to commercialize those technologies, negotiating those agreements, and working with organizations like FLC to help advertise and do some of the marketing that we're not able to do. So it's kind of managing all of those things.
And what makes the work happening at Kansas City National Security Campus unique within the broader federal lab and national security ecosystem?
So we are a Department of Energy facility, and DOE labs are unique in that most of us are run by a contractor model. So we are GOCOs, government-owned contractor-operated facilities. So we have a slightly different framework that we're working under, but the underlying mission is the same, regardless of what agency we're with. We operate as one of the NNSA, National Nuclear Security Agency labs. So that's has kind of an additional national security component to what we do. And although we're considered a federal lab by FLC, we are not an FFRDC or a federally funded research center. Our mission tends to be more on the production and manufacturing of devices and components for our national security arsenal, rather than a purely research-based focus. So we'll work with partner labs like Sandia or Los Alamos or Lawrence Livermore. They do a little bit more of that design and research planning. We will help reduce that to practice. And so what I find fascinating about that is we are closer to a commercial product than most of the FFRDCs, because we are trying to find techniques that will make this reproducible, will make this work in current and growing manufacturing areas. And it's just a fascinating area to work into.
Interesting. Even within the federal lab system, those nuances from lab to lab and agency to agency, it really highlights how much of a range there can be. And given the sensitive nature and the national security sector that you work in, are there any technologies that you can highlight as examples of success stories, or anything that listeners might be familiar with?
Sure. When you're talking about patents and commercialization, you're really, fortunately, moving beyond really sensitive areas. And so by the time an invention gets to me and we start considering for a patent, we're able to remove it from, kind of some of those national security guardrails. It's no longer, we're protecting the underlying invention rather than the application.
Got it.
So our engineers are really good at advancing technology in additive manufacturing or 3D printing. We have a lot of work in metal powder manufacturing, in plastics and ceramics. We do a lot of electronic advancement, I guess, from circuit boards to chips to ways to protect, I guess, counterfeit materials in that space, which is a big security problem, both to the federal government and to commercial industry. We do some computer modeling and cybersecurity work, and, some of those areas will combine. So those are the biggest areas that we're working in.
Excellent. As we sort of segue into pro and looking at kind of professional standards across federal tech transfer. So we hear on this podcast very often people just like you, the way that you found your way into tech transfer through science, others have come through marketing. I've talked to someone who came through HR. And so with so many different backgrounds, why is it important to establish shared professional standards across the community?
It's tech transfer involves so many different aspects, as you just mentioned, and we could, list a dozen more, contracts and intellectual property and marketing, et cetera. And so there's a lot of balls to juggle, and it's not often a career choice that someone made at the college level. We didn't go out to be a tech transfer professional. And so, like a lot of things, that we find professionally, there's a need to kind of figure out the path that others have taken without having to create it ourselves. And the combination of professional training and on-the-job learning are part of that. So, the closer we get to working in tech transfer, the more important that it becomes to figure out what the language other people are speaking. What are the environments that our peers and our customers are working in. Especially, when we're talking about a federal lab, public industry, the public doesn't, designate or doesn't figure out differences between if it's an Army lab or a DOE lab or it's NASA. When they, somebody says federal tech transfer, that is a category. And so it's important that those of us working in that area agree on, some of that language and some of those practices, and that we're interpreting the laws that we're all operating under consistently, and that if we have questions, there are ways that we can go figure those things out.
And so now that we've been leading up to it, but let's actually talk about the pro designation that FLC is launching. And can you explain to listeners what is pro and what is the problem that it's designed to solve?
Sure. So there are numerous certifications and designations out there in technology commercialization. There's, certified licensing professionals. There's the RTTP program. These are ways to, again, get everybody on a common plane of language and understanding and interpretation and operations. All of those have specific environments where they fit really well. And those of us working in the federal space understand that it's yet another unique environment that has additional rules, additional laws, but also additional advantages. And so FLC has been working to, from an educate perspective, make sure that our training is robust and consistent. And if you're learning, if you're a new practitioner, that you can come to us and learn areas about CRADAs or intellectual property or leadership or things in the federal sphere. And an extension of that would be our own designation to reflect advancement in training in that federal sphere of tech transfer. And so we've got some excellent staff members at FLC that have expertise in looking at professional certifications, and they've been working on a professional registered ORTA program, or PRO, ORTA being Office of Research and Technology Applications, which is, really what is tech transfer for all of us. So the PRO, Professional Registered ORTA, is a new program that's going to recognize and support people that are working in federal tech transfer. It's a program that it's not an entry level program, but it signifies that the recipient has has an appropriate amount of history in federal tech transfer. They've had an appropriate amount of education, training, and work to become a professional in this area, and that they have been active in the environment. As in, you have to work at a federal lab or have some experience in a federal lab to receive this designation.
Beautiful. And I know some of the criteria have to do in terms of the webinars and courses that people have taken within a certain amount of time, attending the national meeting. It's my understanding these are really to verify, like you just said, that you have not only the experience, but you're continuing to learn and you're plugged into the community. Is that fair to say, to sort of boil it down to?
Yeah. It's, it's a purposeful designation. It's not something that is, frankly, burdensome to achieve. I think a lot of people will find that in the process of, doing their jobs well and continuing to grow, they'll meet the requirements, fairly easily. But it's also not something that it's just given. So it's a combination of those things.
Absolutely. And from a leadership or partner's perspective, why does seeing this pro designation, peer-reviewed badge, why does that matter to a partner or a leader?
I think, again, when you're dealing with professionals that have been trained in the area, it provides, some security to all of those involved. It provides some guidelines that say, we have the appropriate background to be working in this enterprise. So I think it reassures our licensees and our partners that we understand the intricacies of that federal tech transfer system, and that we have been working to keep ourselves current and up to date, and have been working on that professional development in a purposeful way.
Can you walk through, if there are listeners who are interested in applying, what does that process look like and that timeline?
This is a new program, and we have been talking about the best ways to deploy it and to operate it once it's going. But right now, our plan is to have kind of a quarterly evaluation of applications. So if you are interested in the pro designation, you would submit a CV or resume that shares your professional journey and a set of achievements, indicating that you've had 3 years of experience in a federal tech transfer role. You can have something that lists your educational and training activities like completing a CRADA course or a foundations course at an FLC meeting, and that you've attended a national meeting within the past 3 years. And then, so again, the intention is to have quarterly applications. We have secured a panel of peers that will evaluate these. These would be senior technology transfer professionals that we've worked with and have identified. So they will be evaluating those. And hopefully, the response would be fairly quickly within a month or 6 weeks after application. There are no application fees. This is a benefit that FLC is providing and supporting, and we hope that it helps benefit all federal tech transfer offices and the employees that are in there.
And if anyone is listening to those criteria, you could knock out one of them in May and go to the national meeting. You'd be part of the way there if you haven't been there in the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And from your own career journey, how might a program like PRO have helped you earlier in your professional development?
I think it would have saved me some time. Sometimes we achieve some of our education and training by repeatedly making mistakes and figuring out, what those were and not making them again. I think early in my career, I was, it was very much helped by things like FLC meetings and training and learning from peers and really, the tech transfer community I'm really passionate about because it's a unique community that is giving and helpful and willing to share best practices. And I think I would assemble those best practices as I needed them, without, let's say, any sort of a larger organized framework. Mm-hmm. And so something like the PRO designation would give me a roadmap to say, you might not need this training yet, but you will at some point. Or you might not, these laws might not specifically refer to you and your agency or your lab, but you're probably going to be working with another one where acknowledgement of that is important. So I think it would have shortened the time for me to become a better trained professional in the federal sphere and would have given me probably a larger or a broader perspective of how my job fits in with everybody else's. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's very valuable, particularly as I'm, working on, again, my own professional development and figuring out best ways to work with, the stakeholders and people that I work with.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it strikes me that the innovation landscape, there's so much that moves so quickly and changes rapidly. And then layer on top of that the nuances sort of that we talked about earlier that can change as you may move from one agency or lab to another. So to not have to reinvent the wheel wherever you can avoid it seems like a no-brainer.
Always a good thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to experienced tech transfer professionals who might consider applying?
I would say, absolutely give it, please do. It's another feather in your hat, so to speak. But it also, I think as we progress along our own professional careers, there's a time when you flip the script and you become less the learner and more the mentor. And so I think this is part of that process. I think there's always time to learn and always hope to be a lifelong learner. But at some point, there's, you take a different part in the conversation. And being a PRO designee I think what identifies you as someone that people can go to for questions, for help, for perspective, and hopefully creating more along the process.
And definitely, as federal labs are playing a bigger role in national competitiveness and national security, this investment in professional development of the whole tech transfer workforce, I think, makes a lot of sense and is very encouraging. So what excites you most about where the federal technology transfer profession is heading?
I think that was very well said. I think one of the things that is so exciting about federal tech transfer is that we are operating in this space that's between a purely commercial and a purely academic environment. And we're able to achieve things, I think, faster and more in a more pointed, focused direction that will benefit the advancement of technology and national security and those other areas in the United States. I think, if you ever go, if you've gone through an airport and you've gone through the scanning machines where you have to raise your hands up above, that is a Department of Energy tech transfer success. That was created at the Pacific National Northwest Lab. It looks at shortwave radar and things that are not only fast but safe to use. And everybody's seen those, but I don't think everybody understands that that's a technology transfer success. LASIK surgery, iPhones, all of these things that we use and see and understand have at their, in their DNA, some federal investment. And I think it's a requirement, really, of those of us working in this space to explain the value of that investment, but also, it's really exciting to celebrate those successes. The world is better because of the things that have happened at the federal lab level, and we've, to have a part in that is really, remarkable. So I'm very happy about those things.
Excellent. Well, that's a great note to end. And Andy Myers, thank you again so much for sharing your time and your insights with us.
Absolutely. Hope to see you all at the national meeting in Seattle.
Thank you again to Andy for sharing his insights. If you're interested in becoming Pro-Verified, stay tuned. The program will officially launch this Monday, April 20th. Keep an eye out for FLC in your inbox or check federallabs.org to learn more. And don't forget that you can knock out one of the pro requirements next month by attending the FLC National Meeting, May 12th to 14th in Seattle, Washington. There's still time to register. Find out more at federallabs.org/NM26. That's federallabs.org/NM for National Meeting 26. Thanks for listening and spreading the word about this podcast. Tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast and leave us a review and rating because that helps other people find us. Subscribe and listen to all of our episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Check the show notes or the episode page at federallabs.org for links to more resources and information. Thanks as always to our producer and digital marketing manager, Carly Dunow, graphics manager, Danny Batchelor, web content and systems manager, Jess Klein, and the FLC staff and community for your support. We'll see you back in 2 weeks on Transfer Files Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in to the Transfer Files, your insider's look at federal tech transfer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more episodes exploring how hundreds of government laboratories and countless industry partners are driving innovations that shape our lives.